pandemic edition of the Script Podcast, our second in this series. I'd like to introduce my guests tonight, Alka Khushalani and Kristina Leath-Malin. The Script is the podcast for screenwriters by screenwriters, the deepest story analysis anywhere on the internet. On the Script, we believe story moves pages, story moves product, and story moves people. Tonight, a special pandemic edition, Children of Men, directed by Alfonso Cuaron. There's a few screenwriting credits, but the main credit goes to Timothy Sexton. It's based on a novel by P.D. James. Okay. Alka, Kristina, why did we choose this film?
I would say we chose this film because it is probably the best of the post-apocalyptic genre films. This is it's a really simple film, right? It is one guy, one goal, and he has to just go from point A to point B at the end of the movie. And it is, like the landscape is kind of amazingly, gorgeously beautiful on the way to that goal. So that's why we picked this movie.
Kristina?
We picked this movie because you guys won't flip the coin and come to Zombieland with me.
We want to go to Zombieland.
It was bleak.
We do. I'm
going to disagree. That's what we do.
I think next week, we should definitely do a zombie apocalypse film. To me...
Don't give me that look, Alka.
I am absolutely open to zombies, but perhaps we could find it in another film, and that discussion can be moved to the end of this one.
Yeah, that's a good idea. When I thought of Children of Men, I thought of what we get in the first act of this movie being very relevant to the pandemic we're going through now. The first act of Children of Men shows us one imagined way that the world is dealing with a crisis. And I think it's great to reflect on all of the different variations on the way this world has developed and expanded. This science fiction universe, this version of Earth that, given the crisis that human beings can no longer reproduce, what happens then? And then we go on a journey to try to restore hope for that. But for me, when I was thinking of what movie we should do that might help us reflect on the pandemic, I thought of the world of Children of Men. So
yeah, it's definitely a worst case scenario, and wherever we are in the narrative of our pandemic, it's not that bad. I mean, now going to your real world question, there are places on Earth that certainly I think you could make an argument that they resemble the world of Children of Men. Like, I'm thinking of Syria, I'm thinking of Venezuela. There are places like this. There are pockets of hell on Earth right now. And they are dealing with their own internal civil unrest in addition to this pandemic of COVID-19.
So, Kristina, did you want to comment?
I have so many notes in front of me. I'll let you get into it.
You should just burn them and let it go. It's all in you. It's in your mind. It's in the brain.
Each time you guys say something, I write down a new note. Like I think it's still just coming to me, a lot of things. So
Okay, well, tonight we're going to do one up and one down. Then we're going to do the genre discussion / art imitates life, and maybe talk about Children of Men versus Contagion. Then we're going to do story structure, screenplay structure, and character emotion. And then talk about the visual medium, talk about how this film, which has a fairly straightforward, simple plot, achieves some very original things through the visual choices it makes, which are definitely, obviously are the director's purview, but they're absolutely the screenwriter's purview as well. So why don't we start with one up and one down? Let's get into it. What's the greatest strength and greatest weakness of Children of Men?
Well, you want me to go?
Yeah,
Kristina,
okay.
Your turn. Alka went first last time.
Okay, so the one up, I would say, is the continual theme of hope, which I champion a couple of other films like The Road, which I love, The Girl with All the Gifts. I was thinking a lot about that movie as well, but they don't have the same type of hope narrative that runs through this whole film. And it's extremely moving. And then I'm going to do what I do best, which is the color girl thing. And a secondary one up is that our ingenue is an African American woman. The first baby of this new dystopian world that comes from a Black girl is pretty beautiful to me. One down. This is because I was researching it, that this came out in 2006. And in that year, there was a huge bombing in Mumbai. The year before that, there was a bombing in London. And I think I have to refer to the book if they specifically had the fishes, the Fujis, and this whole Muslim factor. I just get really nervous when we play the Muslim as a radical branch, and they have this whole like Allah Akbar, and I wasn't comfortable with that because I felt like the fishes and the Fujis, I like it. I saw them drawing on, the concentration camp theme. I saw what they were doing, but I just felt like I'd like people to lay off of the whole Muslims are radical people that are killing people randomly. I didn't like that. So it just...
This was not long after 9/11. This would have been produced and shot somewhere around 2004, 2005. So, I think
a bombing in London in 2005 that killed like almost 60 people. So that probably, considering this is kind of a London-esque or a British film, the way where it was made, I feel like that might have been raw for people to do this kind of film right after having that. And you're right, the 9/11. So I think it would have fared nicer to have not thrown in the Muslim thing. That was just
although we could argue, though, in the story, there's never a Muslim terrorist at all. It could have been a comment on...
I mean, there's not a terrorist.
It could have been a comment on just sort of how the media is just going to blame Muslim fundamentalism, because we never see any of those bad guys. All the bad guys in this movie are Western and mostly...
Well, there's no delineation between bad guys. There are the holy rollers and the yellow jackets. There are the fishes. There are... the Islamic contention, they're screaming Allah Akbar, which some people might find that offensive.
That was part of the rebel insurgents. Like, they were actually overthrowing like the government, which is presented here as the bad guy, if you will. That institutional force of the British government is very much an antagonist here. And so when they're marching through the streets of the ghetto at the end, saying Allahu Akbar, it is very much reclaiming their own power. So I don't think that's bad representation. I think it's...
but they're indiscriminately killing. They're not aiming for only for the thing was it was very unclear, those battles, that it felt like just anyone was going to get shot at. So it doesn't feel like freedom fighters are making sure the women and children are safe and only shooting the government. They were shooting everybody. It wasn't clear that they were good guys. I know they were supposed to be considered radical good guys against the establishment, but they were killing anybody. So
I mean, but that's the thing of a post-apocalyptic world, right? Is that there is this chaos, this who can I trust, and that recurs in this film, right? We
one of my
we don't know like who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. We only know to trust Clive Owen to get this woman. We only trust Clive Owen to get key to where she needs to be.
He was like a pretty
That's
undependable drunk, you know. And
pretty much. Okay.
One of the things that made me think about sort of our current world situation, the pandemic, that the Children of Men world, what you guys are describing is a kind of like ultra tribalism. There's religious groups, there's cults, there are the fishes who themselves are like a gang, right? So there's all these, when shit goes bad and the government and our sense of safety and our sense of hope is taken away and the government can't protect us anymore, we go tribal, right? Human beings go tribal. And we see sort of patches of all the different tribes that Children of Men presents us with, including the aristocrats, the wealthy, who are living in a literal ivory tower. I loved that image of that they cross this bridge and it looks like they're going to a castle somewhere. And where the guy who's got the ultimate art collection.
The brother-in-law.
Let's talk about those tribes, right? So we have...
You guys can do your one-ups and one-downs.
Yeah, we can do that.
But I do want to touch on the tribes here because I think it's important, right? So they're the refugees, there's the British government, they're the rebels who are the fishes, who they say that their primary aim is protecting the rights of refugees. And then there's the Human Project. So these are the four factions and the four tribes that are presented in this world. There's
a series of religious cults too who believe in like punishing themselves, or there's a lot of different variations. But I like that you brought up the Human Project. Do we have any evidence the Human Project is real?
Yep. The end.
What evidence do we have?
Tomorrow. I bought that. Hook, line, and sinker.
Okay. The name of the boat they escaped to, the final image.
Although I didn't see any girls on it. I only saw guys on the boat, but I don't know. Just saying.
Alka, did you...
It was the Human Project.
Yeah. Key's excited about it.
Yep. Well, so what did you do? Did you do your down? You did your down.
I didn't. Kristina's done. You do. Alka, can you give us a one-up?
Down.
So what I think is extraordinary here in terms of both the filmmaking and the writing is this is a masterclass in exposition, because the exposition and the way we get the world gets built, it's like layer upon layer upon layer. And very few times, like the only time I remember somebody saying, oh, this is who we are and this is who we stand, what we stand for, is are the fishes. The fishes somebody makes a speech about, we stand for the rights of the refugees. But everything else, it happens in this really like very gently unfolding way. Like we see Diego, the youngest guy, it opens with
Baby
this newscast of baby Diego, the youngest person on the planet, has died. Then it's like they're in a room that's kind of covered with newspapers, you know, when they've kidnapped Clive Owen, and you get the world built from that. Like you can
great image. What does that say to you?
That says to me that this is, and actually this is not my original thought, because Cuaron himself said that that's one of his pet peeves in film, is that when he sees movies that are overly explanatory about this is what's happening and here's who I am and this is what I do. And so it is
That's everybody's pet peeve. Okay. It's one of the hardest things about filmmaking is building a world.
It's to do it like
Hi,
this.
my name is Kristina. I'm a mother.
There's a moment where they tell a joke, and he's like, well, even if the human project is out there and they are organizing, there's like definitely a few clumsy
there are
moments, but it's science fiction. Part of the genre of writing science fiction is that you are creating a world that's different from our natural world. And so it must be explained, the rules and the differences. So there's going to be some exposition at some points. But I like what you said about the visuals explaining the world and not the characters.
And that is just something that happens in a way that is like just really, really, it allows the tension to build in the narrative. It allows the action to continue its momentum. It does so many things right in terms of just giving us the information. Like there is the one animal in this film that does not like Clive Owen is this German Shepherd. He's like walking through like apocalyptic London. And there's this German Shepherd, they're refugees, they're people throwing stuff. And he just kind of is making his way through. And it is a really beautiful way to show, not tell. So that's my number one-up. And there's so many one-ups, though, because I do want to talk about animals and symbols as well when we're talking about all this. But my only down really is that the only time that I also felt like that Deus Ex Machina is when the fishes somehow find him at Jasper's. Like, how did that happen? You know? It just seemed like the most secure place in the world. There was no exchange of information about Jasper. So I kind of, it's a little bit of a hole for me, a little plot hole.
Okay. My one up is, Kristina touched on it a little bit, but this controlling idea about what happens to a society and a man, our protagonist, when they've lost hope, right? How does that break down the human and the society when there is no hope? The idea of we can no longer reproduce. This is our last generation. Everything we've been working towards, whether it's art, music, whether it's engineering, invention, all of these things are worth nothing because we're all going to die. There will be no posterity. We have no hope. And then our protagonist has lost, we find out, lost a child and lost his partner a while ago. They say in the movie 20 years. I was not exactly buying that. 20 years was too long. It seemed more like a 5-year loss. Just the tying together of our protagonist's inner conflict with the world's inner conflict with what we are trying to do in this series, which is take our pandemic situation, feel sort of the losses that we're all going through in this pandemic, and look at this alternate world where they've also experienced a series of losses and get some catharsis from that. A world where the younger generation has no hope. There's no careers. They're not thinking about education. A world where there's not art anymore. No one's creating anymore. A world where everyone's just thinking about their version of a end times narrative. How am I going to go out? That resonated with me a lot. If there's one down for me, I would say Um, I didn't like how they killed off Julianne Moore so quick, but it was a good move to cast, big actor, so that we believe anything can happen, anyone can die. I think the narrative
and how they did it,
yeah, it was
and how they did kill. That is one of the great scenes of all time.
Okay.
What?
I disagree. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you can find it a down. I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to chime in yet.
I just missed,
oh my God, that was like the best thing about this movie.
Okay, you know what? It's connected to now that you're pushing me on it. It's connected to my real down, which is I didn't believe Clive Owen's loss of his child and his
I'm with you on that.
partner, because we never saw them. And I believe it because I was told it and I saw him suffer. But in filmmaking, it's way better to show the loss and then not to. I saw a movie. I saw Midsommar a couple.
That was an amazing movie. Let's not go there. Okay.
And the first act of Midsommar, part of the setup is showing the main character's actual loss.
You did not feel their history?
No.
Didn't feel the history with the car,
barely.
with the ping pong scene?
The ping pong scene, that's a great screenwriting mechanism. I'm glad you brought that up, to show that they have
chemistry.
The chemistry, right? To show that they have a shorthand, okay? And as a head fake, to give us safety, because for a minute they're playing a game. She's safe. Next thing you know, somebody shoots her in the head. But in terms of intimacy, like, caring about a protagonist, when I saw him break down in the forest after her death,
that was great.
I felt more of the loss he's feeling is the world's loss, children of men's world, the loss of being able to reproduce. It was more of this collective loss that I felt the loss of Dylan or Julian.
Julian is not a sympathetic character.
No,
That's
not at all.
You didn't feel it because she's like arranged this kidnapping. She's the head of this rebel group. You kind of don't know if she's a good guy. I think there's a lot that's imbued in that character, but when we like have her in relation to Clive Owen's character, I couldn't disagree with you more, David.
I think I'm mostly troubled by not experiencing the loss of the child. The Dylan.
That's where I'm gonna have to agree with you, David. Like, here's my problem. I feel like their relationship was a mechanism for an amazing scene at the end when he explains to the little girl how to hold a baby. So you see one parent that's lost, like explain, because she's never freaking had a kid. So she's just like, this one thing won't stop. And it's apropos to see him explain to her how to be a parent. And I think that was the setup. That was the reason that happened. Because in my mind, what I read, and I don't want to get clobbered by people, this is my personal opinion. What I read was a woman and a guy had a relationship. She might have had an abortion, but I didn't read having a 2 or 3 year old child and losing it.
But here's the thing
we found out that they lost their baby in a pandemic, a flu pandemic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they lost their baby in a flu pandemic. And
where all the kids who had not been, like, there was the series of miscarriages, right, in this world that was built out. So there was a series of miscarriages that Miriam, the midwife,
they had theirs.
Yes.
Okay, any mom that loses a child is never going to be 100% whole. But I think if you have some odd years to be with that child, you're going to be even less whole. And I didn't buy that she was broken. I didn't buy her brokenness at all. And there's some, and I think she's an amazing actress, but there are layers to showing you're broken and you push through with work.
Yeah, it wasn't bad acting. There
wasn't time to develop that.
She is the leader of a rebel faction. She is not going to show you her soft side.
What he said,
everybody's got a
she didn't have a Clive Owen moment where Clive Owen fell at the tree. She needed to have a Julianne Moore moment where she pretended like she was all good, but she broke down quietly so that we saw that she really was connected to her loss.
was not her story.
Why not
that was not her story. Her story, she was a person of action. She was doing something where she had originated this idea of
totally
getting
agree with you.
to
I'm saying
getting key to safety. That was her thing. She was business. She was all business. She was a badass.
I'm not saying it doesn't
a rebel
work.
faction.
I think it could have worked better. Why don't we have 10 minutes in the film with Clive, the baby, and Julianne, and then, build some of this. Give us one scene before.
And believe or understand her shutdown. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I don't need this at all.
We see them together. You need to see. It's part of Act 1. Part of setup is if you got to build, you've got to show us the character's wound, somehow, and just telling us.
He shows you the wound in the scene with Jasper in Jasper's house. Not only do we see the picture of the family on the wall, okay,
where he's sitting on the side.
He's also telling Key the story.
He's hearing the story of Dylan, and Dylan has his eyes.
And Julian and Clive Owen's character, who's Theo.
Very nice.
Theo. Why can I not remember his name? Theo. Yeah. So Theo.
Very nice scene.
Exactly. You got the story, David. It's there.
I wanted to see the baby. I guess that. Oh,
you
that
got the baby. You got everything.
That would make sense.
Maybe
more of a
that was the decision, and not for her.
Maybe this was the decision was if we showed Dylan as a baby, then the reveal of Key's baby would be less powerful, because that is the crescendo of this film, is when we see the baby, that incredible sequence where they walk the baby through the army, and the men with guns are paused for a moment. The world pauses in awe of the child. So maybe that was the dramatic choice there, not to show a baby early on so that Key's baby has that much more power.
And can we just, I'm gonna just step in again and tell you Key's baby is the important baby, because what we have not touched upon is the biblical setup here. Okay. We are talking about Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Okay. We're talking about this.
She was a virgin.
Yeah, it's true. It's part of that is exactly what I'm getting at. So she reveals her pregnancy in a manger. Okay.
Oh, it was a manger.
Okay.
It was a barn.
Theo's name is actually, Deus, there's the son of God.
You're going there. You're going really deep.
Yes.
You're about to make Holy really happy.
Cuaron is Mexican,
deeply
so it's possible
Catholic.
Is he deeply Catholic? Okay.
He's Mexican. He's Catholic. He's
Catholic country for sure.
Children of Men. The title is taken from the Bible. This is from some psalm, whatever. I have the quote. I am not a religious person, but I can tell you that the quote is, "Thou turnest man to destruction and sayest, return ye, children of men." Okay, so I think there's something about this world that has been destroyed and a return to something. Maybe if one of you knows the Bible better, that's their
not me, man.
Okay, so we Kristina.
No, I'm not going there. Not
and then we have a Jew. We have no. Okay, so
I'm an Irish Catholic.
You should go there.
I'm an Irish Catholic New York Jew who's never been to Hebrew school or Catholic school.
What?
My Sunday school was handball and tennis on the courts.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I get you.
I'm so glad you brought up those animals.
The animals are everywhere, and all of them like Theo, right? I mean, it tells us in one way that he's trustworthy, okay, because all animals know that, but it's also like, again, this biblical idea, like in the Bible, they're always like shepherds and sheep, and, even I know this, right? And in the middle of this, I don't know, I saw like a giraffe. I mean, not a giraffe, I saw a zebra. There was a camel. I mean, this thing is so
There
popular.
was a camel, right in Central Park. There was like a camel, and there was some
Okay, I have an
wise
official
men.
one down now. Now I'm mad, and I have an official one down, and I forgot, and you just reminded me. Rules. How come humans can't have babies, but none of these animals are over 18? None of these animals are over 18. So animals can reproduce. Plants can reproduce.
But that makes sense to me. The conceit of this film is that man has that humans have wasted their chance on this earth. That it's not that the animals won't continue.
That's philosophical. What's your technical? Where was the technical rule about this? About why there's infertility, except for that it just happened.
Well, it's really important, I think, as a choice, as a storytelling choice. That's actually a great point to bring up, Kristina. A lot of audience would want to know what caused the infertility. Why do you do that? Or why do you not do that in a script?
I think you have the pointlessness of that question addressed again in Jasper's house, right? He and Clive Owen are talking, and
I think it's a valid desire for an audience to want to know.
No, it's really I think it's
watch
not
what you
important.
Say, the hater of Midsummer. Watch what you say about rules. The hater of Midsummer. Go ahead.
Love it.
I think the rules here are very, very clear because it's all built into the world. I think Michael Caine puts out there that it is unclear why this happened. And you're not getting an answer because it is unclear. Mm-hmm. He's like, some people thought it was the pollution. Some people thought it was blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't the case. But, in the middle of that joke about the stork, right? Clive Owen also says it really doesn't matter. Why does it matter? And that's why I'm saying to you, it's like, it's less the problem than how you solve it, because it is a very simple story about a guy going from despair to hope on this journey of getting the one pregnant person on the planet to safety. To continue.
So what I'm hearing, Alka, what I'm hearing you say is that by not answering the question in giving us some kind of plot point solution, we get to focus more on the emotional journey and say, by the way, this is not a film where we're going to be giving you facts and lots of this is not a puzzle to solve. We're going to keep the mystery box closed, and you can focus on this emotional journey. And absolutely, I agree. Kristina?
But you know what? That's a perfect segue, because I had in my notes that Contagion was about the cure, Children of Men was about the people. Because through our last talk, it was constantly, how do we get it? How do we get the vaccine? How do we get it? Oh, this is how it kind of affects people. Who has a vaccine now? This was not about figuring out how to fix it as much as seeing humanity deal with hope. And I just said, those are on the polar ends.
Absolutely. I think you just nailed it. If these two films have something in common, they're both about a crisis. They're both about a kind of apocalypse, pandemic but Contagion was about endurance. Like, we've got to wait it out. What do we do to each other while we're enduring until we get to safety? Whereas in Children of Men, there is no safety.
Even more specifically, it was about the cure. We needed to know the steps to the cure. It affects, and we didn't care about a cure in Children of Men.
Right. No, because the conceit is there is none. We are losing our civilization. Now deal with it. Now deal with that loss. And that's very powerful. And that's where a lot of the emotions, to me, that's what Clive Owen's big cry was. I think a lot of us in this pandemic have been feeling such the series of small losses building up. And to me, when I saw him cry, I was like, I want that Clive Owen cry, that catharsis of all of this pain and all of these small losses I've been feeling about the way that our world is right now. Because I'm not worried about this film doesn't hint at all that we're going to get a reason for the infertility. But we get a cure very quickly. 35 minutes in.
Maybe. Yeah.
Should we talk structure? We're already talking character. Should we talk structure? Basic, real quick structure.
Oh, we disagree.
Act 1, inciting incident, plot point 1 / break into 2, midpoint, low point / all is lost, act 3, plot point 2, break into act 3. Real quick, I'll do act 1. We find that major cities are under siege or in the world. The human race cannot reproduce. There's an illegal immigrant crisis, obviously. When the world is in an apocalypse, all of a sudden people start running. And now in the UK, they're overrun with an immigrant crisis. It starts with this baby Diego, the youngest person on the planet, dying, which is a great mechanism for making us think about what it means to lose the ability to reproduce, that eventually we're all going to disappear. Act 1 also mentions New York City has exploded in a nuclear attack, that there are several cults, gangs, and religious groups, that tribalism we were talking about. And they're distributing suicide kits and antidepressants. So that's the world we're living in the Act 1 setup. And then we get an inciting incident.
This is where Clive Owen is kidnapped by Julianne Moore's rebel contingent. They take him off the street and they tell him, "You want to make $5,000 bucks? Help us get this girl out of the country or to a certain place." And he's like, "I really don't know how to do that." But we know he needs the money from one small thing. When they dump him out at wherever they found him, they drop some coins, and this guy is digging up the coins.
He picks them up. He needs the money.
Out of puddles.
Which I tell my screenwriting students all the time, like, I need money for my grandmother's operation is like the worst sort of motivation. But that's not where it's left, because they are keeping a secret from him. But still, the inciting incident, I agree. The fishes kidnap Theo. Oh, I just got it. The fishes. That's the Christian secret symbol for "I am one of you."
Yeah, Jesus fish.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
Got it. Okay.
Jesus fish again.
Stop at the Jesus fish. I get it.
So yeah, Theo refuses the call. He can't do it. He asks his brother, cousin, who's the wealthy elite guy who's saving all the art.
Yeah, that is a scene and a half in itself.
Unbelievable.
Symbolism
with the statue of David and all the art being held in the ivory tower. He asks him, "What keeps you going?" He says, "I just don't think about it."
I don't think about it. That broke my heart in an instant. That one line.
I've been
David, and we've got Guernica in that scene, and you kind of have another way of fleshing out this world. Like, Clive Owen is David going and meeting Goliath, and we've got Guernica, which is the world outside. It is mayhem and war.
Right.
So the break into two is the break into two. Sorry, I was going to ask Kristina, is the break into two Theo agreeing to transport Key and then going on the journey?
I felt like it was more like when she got shot. The first act I felt was about Clive Owen deciding to jump on the adventure or not. And it was about the money at this point. We had nothing really invested in him. Right now he was walking through as the protagonist, but like, where did his stakes come in? I feel like that line of which where plot point 1 says, do you go back to your normal life or do you go forward, is when Julian gets killed, because the shit just gets real at that point. It's no longer just a cash cow. His ex-lover has been shot. There's this whole fire in the woods, people that you love, Alka, that's just turned the script for him upside down. This is supposed to be a quick cash haul. It just became something different. And when he gets back to the fish house, this is where I think it's a bigger plot point. Like from her death to them, that idea to your plot point one says, like, do you go forward or do you go backwards? Can you go back to your life, or do you go forward with the fishes? And I feel like he was ready. He's like, I want to go back to the city. And like, you can't, man, you're on the news. But he's still thinking, I can go back to this old life.
He reveals a certain point.
That's what pushed him forward. Exactly. So that was the crossroad where he was still deciding if he could go back to his old life.
You could argue here that Key revealing she's pregnant is the inciting incident. That it actually happens about
on another layer.
It actually happens about 35 minutes in. It's a little bit late. We're on the journey. They're on a physical journey. We're trying to save this person, but the real journey for Theo alone, without Julian,
is her babe. Yeah,
is when he and it's a way better motivation than I need the money. It's I've got to save the
humanity. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed. Yep.
Act 2, bunch of obstacles, your classic sort of thriller where you're trying to transport someone against the government, against another gang. This basic sort of smuggling thriller. And we were talking about this a little bit. What do you think was the midpoint? Where in Act 2 are the stakes raised? Where in Act 2 does the action, the rising action, really double down?
Well, I think what happens at the midpoint has to do with what the goal becomes, right? And the goal becomes much more specific and much more urgent once they have escaped the fishes, right? Where it's revealed that Luke actually was behind killing Julian.
Yeah.
It was, which is the most shocking thing. And Clive Owen gets them out of there, which is another like super thrilling. It's like the slowest car chase in history.
He's like, push the car.
It is so
Monty Python. Like,
it's like
really going to get
nerve-wracking. It's like, oh my God,
that was so stressful.
Losing my mind watching this like incredibly slow car chase. So he going back to the midpoint. The midpoint is really about like Michael Caine,
Jasper
saying, okay, this is the plan now. We are going to get to Bexhill, which is this like, it's a prison, it's a ghetto, it's like hell on earth, and we're going to get there, and this is how we're getting there. We're going to get ourselves arrested because that's the only way to get in. And so he's going to help get them arrested, get them to this.
Jasper has a plan. They're safe at Jasper's house. They have a respite where they get to talk. We get a little bit of the B story about Clive Owen's child and how they lost him.
So are we also saying, because I totally agree with this, that your midpoint is when the gold shifts? Like up until we got to Jasper's house, when they were at the fish's house, they're like, we'll just move her from house to house every few days. And they're talking about how do we keep her safe. So they're deciding to plant her. When all that goes down, they go to Jasper's house, the change is to a prison goal. So is that how we, just as we're talking, people may watch this, like what a midpoint should do? Should it shift a goal? Should it shift a plan?
The best definition I've ever gotten of a midpoint is it is an inciting incident for the second half of a script. So the midpoint is when it shifts, and while the goal is
it's when they find Jasper and kill Jasper, and the plan is spoiled. Okay, right? Like that.
Or changed.
That's the midpoint. That's the big problem, right? That is for me, the midpoint when, the safe place they are, when this plan that Jasper had.
I would say when they kill Jasper is like classic bad guys closing in. Yeah, I think before that is they are in they are at Jasper's house, and that plan has taken shape. It's not clear. It's not like one of those clear, like, boom, this is but now they have
film is a
this
very
plan to get arrested.
subtle rise. This film is like a very subtle set of.
It's very simple. It's like a simple thread from point A to point B, but how they find that going to this midpoint is really getting the specifics of this plan out. It is about getting arrested, and that's how they're going to enter this place, this prison. Found.
And then they have to get on the road. They have to change the plan. Yeah. Jasper is killed.
Right.
Right.
So then we're back on the road again. Where do we have our all is lost or our low point?
But before we say that, can we just say that, like, for overall themes, like, the first act is more about the money, and the second act is now more about Kia. We don't even know what we're going to do with Kia, but keeping her and the baby safe is all. And it's kind of is I don't know if the word's right, foreshadowing.
No baby yet.
Reverse of
unborn baby.
What's the reverse of foreshadowing? It's like Clive Owen's probably tapping into his feelings about his own kid inspires him in Act 2 to move. It's like, what inspires your protagonist to do what they do in their act? It's money in the first act, clearly. In the second act, I don't know. Is it just saving Kia, or is it a little bit of revenge for his, like, how do you think he's processing his wife? Like, his girlfriend just died. Now he sees her baby. How is he?
I think it all changes when she reveals that she's pregnant, right? She reveals she's pregnant, and now it's not just about seeing through some mission and getting money. It is about saving humanity, like we just said. I think his mission becomes much greater, and there is this, real fine detail about the flip-flops that happens also at Jasper's house that tells you how he is not equipped for this mission. It's just underscoring this guy is pure human. He is not your hero. He's got like every addiction in the book, and he doesn't even have the right footwear.
Yeah.
He is
flip-flops. Oh, you're right.
They get back on the road, and they get on that bus, right? They go to a school. An
empty school, like
an empty school, so haunting. I mean, let's just while we're here, let's talk about some of the visuals, like the empty school. Keys sitting on a swing. The idea that there's just no children around anymore is just so haunting, and a great symbol of hopelessness, right? Okay. The idea of the first act is in the city. They're in London, which is a busy place. There's a lot of hubbub, even though it's a post-apocalyptic or dystopian future. It's still busy, and you can sort of try not to think about your grief. But once you're out in the country, which is once they get on the road, the rest of the Act 2 is in the country, you're forced to think about your grief and your loss. And there's that moment at the school is sort of a pause before we lose the nurse, right?
Yeah, which is the Midlife. Big loss at the.
That hurt.
Yeah, she's and it also kind of again strips Clive Owen of his support, right? So he's lost Julian, he's lost Jasper, and now he's lost Miriam. He is really at that point where it's just him and this girl, and the fate of humanity.
So our all is lost is the loss of Miriam.
Yes.
Her wisdom, her companionship, as well as her ability to deliver a baby, which we know is, the obligatory scene. It's the shotgun that must go off in this film, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's the Chekhov's gun. Yes.
Yeah. And then, so then that's our low point. Dark Night of the Soul. They're stuck. They get stuck in the immigration. They end up in a shitty building in the ghetto, right?
on the dirtiest mattress in the ghetto. That's where she delivers this child, and that's our break into 3.
Not to tokenize you guys, but do you as moms?
Whoa!
Yeah. Do you guys as moms want? Do you guys as moms want to comment on the? This is a theme of the film. Do you, as moms, want to comment on the delivery, the baby, this business?
No, I what I'll say is this. It's very Hollywood. You have a baby cry before any umbilical or mouth cleaning is done, but you hear a baby cry. I think that was like, okay, they just need to keep the plot moving. But
I think that was a CGI baby, no?
Did that baby? Like I looked it up because I felt like there was some type of controversy about that baby, but I couldn't seem to find it. And I feel like I do remember people thought it was too realistic or blah blah blah.
I think they built this. This is like I don't remember where I saw it, so excuse me, but they built this thing where they had her legs, and she was actually in a hole behind that, and so that's how they delivered this baby quite realistically. That was the setup, and that's how I want to comment as a mother too. Is like it was it looks pretty real.
What I will give you that I did buy is the fact that and I thought The Dark Knight is when the cop came, Sid came, because like you saw he was a good guy and he turned out to be a really shitty guy, and I thought that was Dark Knight. But what I will comment about motherhood is when she's limping out, that's truthful to like within 3 hours of giving birth, you're not like, okay, let's go, let's run. She's physically, like her body has gone through something super traumatic, and there's no hospital and comfy pillows. She's on a dirty mattress. There's probably, he basically pouring alcohol in his hands to sterilize taking the baby in. So this is the worst possible conditions to have your water break on a dirty bus and then give birth on a mattress. And I do like the fact that, you kind of see her body trauma when they're hustling out of that building. And even her climbing the steps, it felt real to me ish. I don't know. That's my mommy take, but don't say token. I hate that word. That's
sorry.
Triggering.
I didn't mean to trigger or I didn't want to call you out if you didn't want to talk about momhood. This whole film,
Dark Knight of the Soul. What did you guys call?
Dark Knight of the Soul for me was
he's on his own with Key laboring in the ghetto on the dirty mattress. That's where he has to kind of reach in to his whatever is left of his reserves of courage and of being industrious at this moment with very little. I think that's the Dark Knight of the Soul, that last push for him to kind of, and he's lost everything.
But they're also before that they're stuck in this like this hell of the refugee camp, right? With they're in line. It's almost like purgatory. There's a cop who like steals his watch. It reminds me of a concentration camp, right? Like, oh, you're probably gonna die.
There was definitely callbacks to concentration camps there in the Holocaust.
They end up in the ghetto, and people are trying to take advantage of them. And yes, and Key is in pain, laboring. So I feel like that was Dark Knight of the Soul.
Yeah.
But here's my question, even too, with Dark Knight of the Soul, this is okay. What's the difference between Dark Knight of the Soul and All Is Lost? Because like, which one should really propel you into that final battle?
All Is Lost is your challenge, is your low point, right? Which is the lowest point. Your protagonist is at the lowest point of their journey. Dark Knight of the Soul is a segment after that where you're mourning the loss of the All Is Lost. So it's the mourning, it's the getting over it part, and that can be a moment or.
So when the fishes catch them again. Sorry, when the fishes catch them again and blatantly kills the first guy, about to kill Clive Owen and Marta. What is that to you guys?
Well, I
This
think
is like the third or the fourth kidnap at this point.
Is this after the baby's born?
We're deep in third act. And
that's
now
like third act that
we're in
going
Act 3.
towards the finale.
We're in Act 3. When the baby's born, Act 3, I think Act 3 begins. The mission has escalated once again. It's not just get Key on the boat, it's get this baby and Key on the boat.
Yeah.
Right? And so now we're in
that final push.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the final, it is the finale.
London. We've gone from London, then Act 2, the country, and now we're at the port trying to get her on a boat, right?
Mm-hmm. And this port is like one of the circles of hell, right? Like this place there's smoke, there's graffiti. We get the religious cults the religious organizations and the cults all trying to reckon with the end of days. And it's a refugee camp where everyone is excluded. Everyone has been told, there's no room, in London for you, right? We have that incredible scene where Clive and Key and the baby are escaped through the building, and the soldiers all pause for the baby. The war stops. The crisis pauses for a moment, and the tanks they spread, and for a moment there's peace in the world, and then as soon as they're off, the war goes right back to where it was.
Yeah, I thought that was,
and that's like foreshadowed by Theo saying earlier, it really doesn't matter because the world is going to shit. It's going to destroy itself anyway. And that is something that is, he gives us two visions. There's this end vision, which is this tomorrow boat coming in, right? And that is of hope. But what happens after they kind of walk through with this baby, and everybody's kind of startled, and they're
it's polarizing to everyone. Some people probably are just like,
but they go back to the fighting.
That broke my heart, and I feel like that was the director and the writer saying, this is the truth, this is the signature on the love letter. You always, no matter,
it's not going to be so easy.
Exactly.
And that is,
you know what, I'm so, as the pandemic in the United States, as we're starting to see our curves flatten, we're starting to see people start to see a light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see people get back to their old bullshit. And it really resonated with me.
Well, the funny thing is, in our world, it flattens, the curve flattens, that's great. Why are you starting to open beaches? That's not a priority in Florida. They're opening beaches. And I'm like, really? That and the Starbucks, that's a priority. No.
We got through structure and character. Do you guys want to comment on Art Imitates Life? What about this movie brought you, resonated with you and your own struggles in this pandemic?
So I'm going to say that, this film was made in a post 9/11 America. We were starting to get reports from Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo. And I think that is what we're seeing here, is a response to that world. It definitely resonates because
another global crisis.
And it definitely resonates with us now because we do have our little Auschwitz on the border, on the Mexican border, thanks to our president, which we have completely, which has moved out of the news as soon as we've entered this period of quarantine. And I think what really resonated about this story, where in almost every depiction of the real world, you have immigrants in cages and immigrants painted as the other. And there's this certain like survivalism that's attached to the idea of the other coming to get you. That is what is really kind of still simmering at the underneath the surface of our world, right? Is I think people are still talking about, the border, and if our president has been successful with protecting the border, and for some that is still a concern. We're in the middle of a pandemic, we're all quarantined, we're all housebound, and there are people who are still considering this world of the other and the threat of the other as a real threat to our survival.
Kristina,
Yeah.
what about Children of Men made you think about your experience in the pandemic?
Well, I had it and it just went away because I was deep into what you were saying. I think I'm not going to say we're lucky, but I'm going to say that we have this sense closer to Contagion of seeing a future. And this film was more, even though the hope was a thread, it didn't feel like there was a future with this film. So I feel like it's a little bit more distant. But what struck me was something that resonated that we didn't talk about was the idea that the government would start giving out suicide kits, and how against the biblical sense, like killing yourself is a mortal sin. So the fact that we're talking in biblical terms of this film and these animals and this life versus death, and our main character dies at the end so that life can go on, but we have a government that's ready to kill us or help us kill ourselves. The irony is not lost. And the sad part is I know this sounds bad, but I wouldn't put it past our current administration to do something similar in an eerie sense, just looking at how they're handling the current situation. And I think it's kind of a loss of hope in our government right now, because their infighting is taking precedence over the people. And it's really disappointing that our government feels more like Children of Men's government, and that we're not the priority, but what they believe is a priority. So yeah, that's what I pulled from it, which is slightly different, but yeah.
And I think, it's something to talk about, about this pandemic, is we really thought that this was something that was going to be especially, it was especially going to devastate a population of older people, right? When we first heard about COVID. And in this film, like there is a government mandated suicide called quietus, right?
Quietus, yeah.
And I think it's every month they have like this mass drowning of people over 60, because they view people over 60 as not contributing to society any longer. And this is definitely a society, like David said earlier, that's kind of like bereft of any industry, art, etc. All of those things that kind of make life worth living and make people, that the ambition that drives people. But I think it is very interesting that is the line that they drew, that it's like 60 and up, you're done. Meanwhile, the population is dying out. So there was a little cognitive dissonance there.
This is what this film, and I think what the films in this series have meant to me, like in our pandemic, is a reminder that as soon as we lose hope or safety, we get tribal and we stop thinking about people as human beings, and we start thinking about them as either in our tribe or out of our tribe. In this pandemic, it's the people who are elder, who we're forgetting about. We're seeing the people in nursing homes. We're seeing people in disadvantaged communities who don't have the money and the resources to stay safe in the pandemic, or to get hospitalization and to get the medical aid they need. We're seeing this pandemic is reminding me, just like in Children of Men, how quickly the refugees become other, right? They're just not one of us. And another podcast I love is Still Processing with Jenna Worth.
Love Still Processing.
Yeah, they this week they did an episode. They're doing a bunch of pandemic episodes, and they did an episode on the documentary How to Survive a Plague by David France, which was about the AIDS epidemic and the efforts of the activist groups ACT UP and TAG on how to organize and combat a disease when the government is not adequately addressing it. And I think Children of Men, brought me to that place of, it feels like this world is lost. It feels like this is hopelessness. That I just want to drink and cry and take a pill and go into my art gallery and stare at David. We're all doing that. We're all watching Netflix all day and watching TV. We're just trying not to think about it. When really what we should do is turn towards a person of hope or an option, something that will give us back our instincts, our human instincts, and give us a purpose again.
Well put.
Yeah, I think this is this speaks to how great this film is. It's really, really bleak, the worldview of this film. And yet we kind of, I don't know about you guys, but I seem to have seen this any number of times. And that, I think, is the result of its tremendous filmmaking. And I think we have not even talked about the incredible, that one shot where Julian is killed, which is really in that filmmaking Hall of Fame. Cuaron and his cinematographer Chivo, they rigged out the craziest contraption ever, and they hung a camera from the roof of that car in such a way that camera was just turning. There was not a cameraman in that car. There was just this camera that was turning, and it was getting what it was getting.
And when she gets shot, the blood stays on the lens.
And the windshield cracks. It is a thing it is a miracle that scene exists, and that it was captured on film in the way it was captured.
That image is the greatest visceral, visual, cinematic loss moment. This film thematically is about a loss and grieving and mourning and dealing with loss, but we are shocked. We are having a happy moment, and then all of a sudden she's killed, and Julianne Moore is a famous actress. You can't kill her this early in a movie, so we get shocked with that moment. And Cuarón, he's trying to make us feel loss.
Well, we have it a couple of times, though. We have it at the very beginning, the blowout scene in the cafe. We have it there, which you guys mentioned. And then also when when Clive Owen's running to get Kia back at the very end, when the guys take her up in that building, and you're following Clive Owen, he puts Marta to the side. When he goes on that bus, because the guy with the dread sees him, and they're shooting up the bus with all of the refugees or the immigrants in there, blood splurts on the camera. And that whole scene was very immersive, and it totally gave me Saving Private Ryan vibes. Like, you are going to be in it. You're not just going to sit as an audience member and think, oh, that guy's running over there. You're running with him. And a lot of these scenes, you were like, I was emotionally like in it with him, and it visually.
I think that's a really good point that Kristina just made, because it's like from the moment that they enter that place, that ghetto, it is shot like a war movie. This could be, in any like high budget war movie, like anywhere. And it is really like, again, like when you're stacking all of the things that are going against Clive Owen, it's like it is the piece de resistance, that
didn't it also
he is
feel
now
like a West Wing
in the middle of
tracking shot? You're following him, like the West
It
Wing.
reminds me more of the 1917 tracking that we just saw. If you saw 1917 this year by Sam Mendes, but if you think about the effect of this kind of verite filmmaking, these camera strategies that Chivo and Cuaron achieve, which have become sort of, which have been imitated since Children of Men, by Iñárritu, another great Mexican filmmaker, as well. The effect that it achieves is intimacy. It's more like the theater. You get to sit on that bus with Clive Owen and Julianne Moore from a distance. You're on the street with them, and then the camera is actually into the bus with them. You achieve intimacy more of a like you're at a play in the theater, and you that mechanism they use for the car scene. It's like you're in the car, and Sam Mendes comes out of the theater. I think Cuaron has a love for the theater as well, and the way that you can bring a two shot, not just an over the shoulder like basic director's repertoire, but something that feels more like you were saying, immersive, so that we feel the emotions of this film more. Because this is not about the plot. This film is not about why did we become infertile. It's about what do you do with the grief of loss of this crisis. You guys have anything comments you want to say you didn't get to say? Things you're dying to let out? You got some notes there, Kristina, you didn't get to?
No, I think I did. You guys, if I did, you guys hit it. The haves, have-nots. Comparatively, who do you think did a better job at have-nots? Contagion or Children of Men?
Children.
I think you definitely have like these strata in both these films. I think it is very, very clear in Children of Men because of the cages and the desperation in the world around Theo, that
they're 10 years
like
into
a deeply, deeply stratified society that we are living in.
Children of Men is 10 years into its crisis, whereas Contagion, we begin before the crisis, and we begin to see the class distinction, and the haves and the have-nots over the course of the same 2 hours. I think it's much clearer in Children of Men what happens when you define groups as other and exclude them.
Well, and also they leave one of those strata as a deep mystery of the film, right? The human project. We never know what's up with the human project. Does it exist? Is it a thing? Is it really this, like, going to save humanity? And are they the right people to take Key and the baby now? I mean,
And
that is
kind of dies on the boat. Maybe he's dead, maybe he's not.
Yeah.
But
he's dead.
We get to see the boat says tomorrow, which is a beautiful metaphor for hope, for
The future.
trying to get it back. Yeah.
I will say this for some levity. I watch a lot of Drag Race, and some of the after shows of Drag Race talk about different outfits, and they always go trend alert. And I feel like the trend alert here is kidnapping, because it happens like in every act. There's a different kidnap. It's like continuous kidnap. I just want to call that out.
That's the thriller. No, you're right. This is the structure of this plot is definitely wrapped in your classic sort of thriller conventions. So you're right. Guys, thank you so much. I want to thank Kristina and Alka. Please join our Facebook page by searching for NYC Screenwriters Collective. Follow us on Twitter at ScriptFeed. Email us with questions, comments, and complaints at scriptfeed@gmail.com. I'm David Negrin. Now go set a timer for 10 minutes and write something.